Okay, so this is a look at the next chapter. It's this called Pema Chodron calls this preparing the ground, and she focuses on this word confession. So if you have the textbook, no time to lose, you can follow along with me, or there are several online versions of this. But we're just going to go through this whole next chapter and briefly, my goodness, it's already 6. Yeah, briefly going through this whole next chapter and picking up some of the highlights of it to get a sense of what we're talking about. So if you remember, so first of all, just a brief review. Shantideva is attributed as the author of the Way of the Bodhisattva, and he's kind of this clown type character who is considered a kind of a goof off and slept through meditation. He didn't do very much, and then when he was finally put to the test and his fellow monks tried to embarrass him, he came up with this amazing treatise, and as he was giving the treatise, he is ascending higher and higher in the air until he completely disappears. So it has this mystical element to it, mythological element to it. And the first chapter of the Way of the Bodhisattva praises bodhicitta, this desire to wake up completely, this desire for enlightenment. What is this enlightenment? What does that look like? Well, we can, to give a definition is to already limit it, but it's somehow waking up to something that's larger than ourselves, bigger than ourselves. And I want to connect again with this cultural historian Thomas Berry that I mentioned earlier. He talks about what human beings are is that mode of the universe that is able to consciously self-reflect. You think about that for a second. Try to wrap your mind around that. We are the aspect of the universe that becomes self-conscious. We're that aspect, we're that mode of the universe. We're the mode of the universe that is self-conscious, that becomes conscious of itself. So in other words, another way of saying it is that the universe, through human beings, the universe becomes conscious of itself. It's fascinating to think about that, right? The humans, we become conscious of being universe.
So we are supreme species in the universe because nobody else can do it.
Well, that's our mode. That's our particular function. Not that it's superior. I mean, the whole universe, it's the whole universe that goes into that particular mode. But the whole universe creates the creation. Everything comes from, and the human beings, our unique function is that we have this unique ability to reflect on ourselves, to see ourselves actually as a universe. So anyways, this is, I'd like to think of that as, to consider that thought of waking up to ourselves as the universe reflecting on itself as a way of describing bodhicitta, the desire for enlightenment. If we think about what the Buddha taught, it points us in the direction of enlightenment, that we are more than what we think we are. In other words, our mind, we get into these concepts and ideas of who we are. We label ourselves, we give ourselves a name, and then we act as though that's who we are. And it's not that that is wrong, it's just a very limited view of the self. And Buddhist teaching is that we are much more than that. In fact, the Buddha, Dogen says, he says that you go forth and experience myriad things is delusion. That the myriad things go forth and experience themselves is awakening. And I think that particular line connects directly with what Thomas Berry is saying, is that we are the mode of the universe that becomes consciously self-reflective. right? That the universe comes forth and realizes itself is awakening. That's Dogen. That's Zen Master Dogen talking. So to see that, to get glimpses of that I think that is, bodhicitta is responsible for that desire to wake up. Bodhicitta. Bodhi means to awaken. Citta is that energy, or that the heart of awakening. So now this next chapter is about how do you develop bodhicitta? How do you, and Pema Chodron says, I have often wondered how the first glimmers of bodhicitta come about. So this whole, all the verses in this chapter are really about how to cultivate bodhicitta and keep it consistent, keep it going. Because remember, there's that line from Nagarjuna, may bodhicitta, precious and sublime, right? This desire for awakening, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has arisen, may it not decline, but grow and flourish more and more. So how do you continue? How do you maintain bodhicitta? How do you give rise to it, and how do you allow it to keep going? So Shantideva, he says, first you got to make offerings. Got to make offerings, and his definition of offerings is much wider than our usual understanding of offerings. Right? When we think of offerings, you might think of a basket going around a church and putting your money in there. That's an offering. That's a good offering. But his is much bigger than that. He says, so let me read some of these verses. To the Buddhas, those thus gone, and to the sacred law, immaculate, supreme, and rare, and to the Buddha's offspring, oceans of good qualities, that I might gain this precious attitude, I make a perfect offering. So this first verse is talking about basically taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, right? Those are the three things, to the Buddhas, to the Dharma, the law, and to he calls the offsprings of the Buddha. So this is, what's going to follow is very flowery language, both literally and figuratively. So he's going to make, he's stating this, I'm going to make this offering. So what does he offer? Every fruit and flower, and every kind of healing medicine, and all the precious things the world affords, with all pure waters of refreshment. Okay, and that's the first verse. Now, listen to this. Every mountain rich and filled with jewels, all sweet and lonely forest groves, the trees of heaven, garlanded with blossom, and branches heavy laden with their fruit. All right, so now he's getting into, he's offering mountains. The perfumed fragrance of the realms of gods and men. All incense, wishing trees and trees of gems, all crops that grow without the tiller's care, and every sumptuous object worthy to be offered. Lakes and mares adorned with lotuses, all plaintive with sweet-voiced cries of water birds and lovely to the eyes, and all things wild and free, stretching to the boundless limits of sky. Right? So the first, these first set of offerings, Pema Chodron writes, she says that they're of nature's bounty, right? Fruits, flowers, waters, trees. These are not things that you can own, that you can possess. And that's a wonderful thing to think about, because offering, to give rise to generosity within us, we don't necessarily have to be super wealthy. We can be the poorest of the poor and still make offerings. That levels the playing field. Isn't that an interesting way to think about giving? Yeah.
How you can offer if someone belongs to you?
Right. But that's what the offering is. It doesn't belong, but it's a gesture. And think about how the mind shifts when you're given permission to offer something that doesn't belong to you. Right? And what are you offering it to? So anyways, it's something to think about. Okay, next lines, he says, I'm going to verse 2.8. The Buddhas and their Bodhisattva children, I offer them myself throughout my lives. Right? So you could even make an offering yourself. I'm making myself an offering to the Buddhas. You can make of yourself an offering. Right? Supreme courageous ones, accept me totally, for with devotion I will be your servant. For if you will accept me, I will be a benefit to all and freed from fear. I'll go beyond the evils of my past and ever after turn my face from them. So, yeah.
When I read about offering mountains and flowers, I'm thinking he's offering all of himself, which is the universe.
Uh-huh.
He's offering all of himself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
everything
and
that
there's
he
not that,
is the universe.
right. Yeah, that's a good point, Chico. That gets back to the point of we're larger than this individual body. And ownership, we have this, that's half of it. But the other half is the Buddhism sees things in terms of these what's called the two realms of existence. The first realm, the one that we primarily live in, is the relative, or the relative dimension of the world, where we see ourselves as separate. The other dimension of the universe is also present 100% every moment, is the absolute dimension. And that's where we are 100% identified with the universe. So from that perspective, from the ultimate perspective, yeah, absolutely, you can offer mountains, trees, and all of those things. Okay, but he goes on, he says, a bathing chamber, excellent fragrant, with floors of crystal, radiant and clear, with graceful pillars shimmering with gems, all hung about with gleaming canopies of pearls. There the blissful Buddhas and their heirs I'll bathe with many a precious vase, abrim with water, sweet and pleasant, all to frequent strains of melody and song. With cloths of unexampled quality, with peerless perfumed towels, I will dry them and offer splendid scented cloths, well dyed and of surpassing excellence. So he goes on here. I'm just going to kind of keep moving here. I'm kind of skipping ahead to verse 2.15, page 31. I will place before the Buddha, perfect object of my worship, flowers like the lotus and the mandarava, utpala, and other scented blossoms, worked and twined in lovely scented garlands. This is not too out of the ordinary. If you go to a temple in Japan, or even at Zenshuji, they have these huge lotus flowers on either side of the altar. They're not real lotuses, they're not live, but they're majestically made, large, and so that's an offering, and incense. But we made an offering here on our altar with flowers that Heather found outside. A beautiful offering. There's the flowers, the water, the candlelight. Shantideva talks about incense, right? I will offer swelling clouds of incense whose ambient perfume ravishes the mind, and various foods and every kind of drink. So that's a practice in Zen temples too. We make offerings on special occasions to the Buddha. We put these offerings on the altar as an offering. Does the Buddha come down and get it? That's not the point. The point is that you make an offering, right? You give. All right. I will offer precious lamps, golden lotuses, a bed of flower petals scattered upon the level incense sprinkled ground. All right. May a multitude of other, this is verse 2.20, may a multitude of other offerings accompanied by music sweet to hear be made in great successive clouds to soothe the sufferings of living beings. So to offer music, and that's something that we do as well, we chant sutras. So this is another way that you can make an offer by reciting the sutras. That's also an offering. All right. And so I'm going on to page 34. The next, he says, in the center, he says, the next of the 7 practices is prostrations. By offering prostrations, we prepare the ground further for the seed of bodhicitta to take root. So, bowing. Yeah, bowing. So the first part is making offerings, any kind of material offerings, right? Is to make those. So again, keep it in context. What's the purpose of these offerings? It's very selfish. It's to awaken bodhicitta and keep it growing. So that's these material offerings that are made that include our own body and mind. But another kind of offering you can make to the Buddhas is prostrations or bows. And a lot of times people get turned off by bowing. And actually here at the Quaker meeting, you know, the Quakers, one of the hallmarks of Quakerism is they don't bow to anybody. Because in England, where Quakerism started, this is just, I don't know a lot about the Quakers, but this is one of the things that I was told by a Quaker, is that when Quakerism was getting formed, if you were in a lower caste or class in England, you had to bow to those that were in an upper class. And so the Quakers, they made the intention they will not bow to anybody. So consequently, they don't bow. They don't bow to, and that shook things up in that society. Personally, I love bowing. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful practice, and it uses my whole body. You know, in a society like the United States where everybody's equal, I think actually bowing is a way to shake things up, because you're recognizing your humility and that there's something deeper than equality taking place. Equality is very much prized in U.S. culture, but to bow, my goodness, there's something deeper than just equality here, I think. I have an intuitive sense of it. Maybe I can't completely articulate it, but when I bow, it's like the whole body moves into it, and I'm using my whole body in making an offering to the Buddha. I don't even think about it as making an offering when I do it. I just do it. So here he says, to the Buddhas of the past, the present, and all future time, with bodies many as the grains of dust, upon the ground I will prostrate and bow. Now, Pema Chodron points out here on page 35, the first paragraph, she says, Shanti Deva visualizes countless images of his body making prostrations. So that's another thing that you can practice, visualizing yourself as multiple bodies, right? Not just your own one physical body. Again, we're just expanding the mind. And then I'm just moving on to page 36. She says, Pema Chodron says on the bottom of 36, she says, when we do something we wish we hadn't, we don't remain oblivious. We acknowledge it with what Dzigar Kongtrul Rinpoche calls positive sadness. This is going to be an important point, because the verses that I read next might be a turn off to people. She says, instead of condemning ourselves, we can connect with the open-hearted tenderness of regret. Thus, the habits of self-deception and guilt have a chance to wither away. This is the essential point of the practice of confession. Now, the subtitle of this chapter is confession. So the remaining, or the verses that follow, have to do with making confession for things that we have done that we regret, things that we've done that are wrong. And I think Pema Chodron really picks up on the difficulty that this chapter raises for a lot of Westerners. And she puts a good spin on it. She talks about positive sadness. Shantideva, verse 2.28. 2.28. In this and all my other lifetimes, wandering in the round without beginning, blindly I have brought forth wickedness, inciting others to commit the same. I have taken pleasure in such evil, tricked and overmastered by my ignorance. Now I see the blame of it, and in my heart, O great protectors, declare it. So there's basic four parts to this confession in Tibetan Buddhism. One is recognition of misdeeds with positive sadness, he calls it, with positive sadness. So we don't have to beat ourselves up. And the thing is that in the West, here's the hump that we have to get over with confession. There's not a fixed self that you can condemn, right? In the West, we tend to think of this idea of original sin, right? That's a strong embedded idea in a lot of us, that we are unworthy right from the start of our birth. And that is not a concept found in Buddhism, because there's no fixed self. There's no solid self. All right, that's the reasoning here. So you don't have to get stuck or caught in some idea of a sin from the original sin.
It's more like Christianity, it's not necessarily Western, because other Western religion doesn't have it.
Right, yeah. That's right. However, it's a very strong strain in Western culture, this idea of original sin. It's certainly not in Judaism, right?
Not even all Christianity.
Not even all Christianity.
If you call Christianity Western religion.
Right.
Actually, Christianity is not Western religion.
Oh, good point. Okay. All right. So in verse 2.31, she says, all the evil I, a sinner, have committed, the sin that clings to me through my many evil deeds, all frightful things that I have caused to be, I openly declare to you, the teachers of the world. So then she writes here, she says, this translation, I, a sinner, may be misleading. Buddhism stresses going beyond any fixed identity, good, bad, or in between. This is an important piece here. So when he's saying, when this verse reads, I, a sinner, he's not talking about this fixed person that's always a sinner and has to continually, never able to break out of that idea, not as a fixed identity. So one positive view of words like sin and sinner is that they get our attention and remind us this is not a subject to be taken lightly. So that's the point here. When you hear these strong words, sin and sinner, it's meant to jolt us a little bit. We might feel a little squirmy and uncomfortable. All right.
So, but generally, what is the sin in Buddhism?
What is what?
What sin in Buddhism?
What is sin in Buddhism?
What is sin?
Yeah, well, you have a conscience, right? And that conscience knows when you've done something you shouldn't have done. You can feel it inside if you've done something that you shouldn't have done. But basically, if you want an external view of that, you have the 5 precepts: not to kill, not to lie, not to steal, not to commit sexual misconduct, not to abuse drugs. So these are things that prevent us from seeing our unity with reality. Anything that has us think that we're separate from others, that's a big view of sin. Yeah.
Until now, I thought biggest difference between Buddhism and other creationist religion.
Ah.
It because if you're talking about the cause of the continuously, I don't know how to say it's proper English, instead of it was God who created everything.
Uh-huh.
So it's no real concept of the sin. It's just the choice to bring different results. But now when you're talking about the sin, it's to kind of change the concept of Buddhism.
Yeah.
So, because I understand in Buddhism before, it wasn't really, it was wrong and right, but it's more like a better road or worse road. It's
Right.
not exactly,
So-
it's not exactly sin.
Right. Not in
It's
the.
exactly bad and evil.
Right.
good and
So
evil,
so my teacher would say in Buddhism we're not punished for our sins. We're punished by our sins.
yeah.
You see the difference? When you're punished for your sins, somebody else is taking tally and is going to give you judgment at some point, sometime. But in Buddhism, there is this concept of karma, and what goes around comes around. So if you do something that's harmful to somebody else, eventually it comes back to you.
So it's not a sin, it's like I told, it's a better road.
However you want to think of it, yeah. I mean, it doesn't. If sin gets in the way of understanding, then don't use it. When you're angry, though, the first person who gets hurt is not the person you're angry at. Yeah, if you're angry, you're already in a hell. And if you, yeah, so it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. We do things that make ourselves suffer.
So if it's anger exists, I thought it's part of universe, so it's the reason. It's not the case.
That's not the case.
Because this is what I thought in Buddhism, like everything should be like in balance, in equality, because it's a chain of the. So if somebody angry, now you say he's in hell, but why he's in hell? Because it could be reason, it could be for good. It's because it's you don't really know reason, and don't really know effect of it. You just try to be understand, but like if it exists for a reason.
Do you have a specific? Are you thinking of something specific?
Yeah, if for example, you see, not you, sorry, but if somebody see a child molesting, he can get angry, push him to the act to stop.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's
So
right. That's not a sin.
yeah, well, he's angry.
Well, then, I mean, right.
See,
So there's
this
subtle.
is what
There's
I love in Buddhism, because
right.
it's
No,
Can you repeat
that's-
what's being said,
that's love.
please?
it's not the point,
Oh, they
Yeah.
can't
So
understand.
Alex was saying that if somebody sees somebody else molesting a child and they stop them, isn't that person angry? And would that be a sin to be angry because you see witness somebody molesting somebody and then you stop them? And no, it's not. Yeah, Heather, you want to respond?
I was gonna say, if you're responding to this horrible thing because you're outraged and angry, I mean, aren't you having compassion for the child by stopping it? Like that, I kind of look at it as you can be angry and compassionate at the same time. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. No, I
Right.
agree with you. But my question is, when we start talking about the sin and about the like, to put the clear label or clear border, it's kind of like make the Buddhism not much different from any other religion.
Well, you'll have to figure that out for yourself. But yeah. Yeah, I can't speak
no,
to.
I thought philosophy of the Buddhism is a little different. It's what we spoke. It's the chain of the events of the cause. So it's choose the road, better or worse, and it's what you choose is bring you back, like you told.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, well, keep studying and see for yourself. We all find our ways to this. And you know, if there's certain aspects of Buddhism that you don't like, you can always dispense with them. You know, if it doesn't make sense, try, the Buddha didn't say, you have to believe what I'm saying. He just said, check it out for yourself, and if it makes sense, then practice it. If it doesn't make sense, dispense with it. So I think from that's the lens that I'm looking at this at. Whether you take it to heart or not is up to you. And it may not be helpful for some people. I'll just read a little bit more. Pema Chodron, she says, one positive view of words like sin and sinner is that they get our attention and remind us this is not a subject to be taken lightly. I prefer to avoid words that are culturally loaded, so we don't infuse Buddhist teachings with misleading projections. Trungpa Rinpoche, for instance, translated the Tibetan word dikpa as neurotic crimes rather than sin, choosing a psychological rather than an ethical interpretation. Words that identify us as fundamentally marred don't seem helpful. Without them, we're more likely to feel inspired to connect with our inherent strength and goodness. Does that make sense?
This is exactly what
Okay, there you go. There you go. So that might be a good way to think about it. So the translation, the problem is in the translation. So the word is dikpa in Tibetan, and that dikpa has been translated in this particular text as sin. But Trungpa Rinpoche translates it as neurotic crimes. So he psychologizes it rather than making it an ethical thing. Okay, I'm going on to verse 2.36. All that I possess and use is like the fleeting vision of a dream. It fades into the realms of memory, and fading will be seen no more. She says, this verse evokes the insubstantial quality of our lives. So Pema Chodron is pointing out these next verses talk about the dreamlike quality of our life. Right? So take a moment to think about that. So this particular chapter, it's starting out with making offerings to the Buddha. It's starting out with making offerings and then going to prostrating to the Buddhas and then going on to confessing one's faults to the Buddhas. And now it's invoking this dreamlike quality of the world that we live in. All right. Never halting, and here's impermanence. Never halting night or day, my life is slipping by, and nothing that has passed can be regained. And what but death could be my destiny? Again, so keep in mind, this whole chapter is about how to awaken bodhicitta. The first part is to make offerings. The second part, bowing. The third part, confessing your faults. And now the fourth part here is about impermanence, about noticing the dreamlike quality of existence. I was just talking earlier today about with my mother, my father just having passed away, and she shared with me that, when I first came to practice Buddhism, my mother wanted nothing to do with me. She said, "Eric, you're out of the will." Seriously, she said that. Now I'm back in the will, by the way. Okay. But since my father passed away, she wanted me actually to be the officiant for his ceremony. And I was really so honored to do that. And I gave her this calligraphy that I made of the Chinese character dream. And I told her, this is what Buddhism says, that the nature of reality is really like a dream. And when we see things, we don't always see things in that way. We get caught up in our lives and doing things and fixing things until somebody important to us dies. And then we start to reflect, like, where did they go? And you know, that invokes this dreamlike quality of reality, that we're not here forever. And it, you know, it just, that dream quality presses in on us. Yeah, so these next verses kind of talk about that. All right, so, you know, this chapter goes on quite a bit more, but I'm going to end there and just encourage you all, again, get the book, read her commentary. It's really helpful. I think you could see that with your question, Alex, about sin and sinfulness and all that kind of thing. It removes it from the ethical to the, what was the word? The psychological, more psychological. So, but anyways, look at that, the remainder of the chapter on your own, see how it bodes with you. Hopefully it's an inspiration. It's been an inspiration to me to reread this stuff. I haven't read it in quite some time. So, all right, I'm going to end this from right now. So thank you all very much.